Welcome to ADB Football Focus. I'm your host, Alvin. I hope you guys are having a wonderful weekend. Hey, you know that college football show I plan on giving you? It is still coming. I still have to watch the Alabama A-Day game. I wanted to go back and watch Auburn and Ohio State so I can give you guys a good show. So, guys, just hold on. That show is coming. But let's talk about UFL football right now because we just got through watching another wonderful weekend of UFL football, and some things came to fruition this weekend. Some teams scored a lot of points, and other games were closer than they should have been. Let's talk about, probably to me, the best and most important game of the weekend was the Birmingham Stallions versus the Memphis Showboats. Now, the Stallions put up 424 yards against the Memphis Showboats, winning 33-16 at Protective Stadium in Birmingham. Coach Skip Holtz finally decided to go with Adrian Martinez as the solo starter, putting up 324 yards and 2 touchdowns. Now, I think this is the most brilliant thing he could have done. The 2-quarterback system, they still were able to win because of all the talent on the team, but you could tell if they weren't able to find a solid passer, they were going to be in trouble in later weeks. Now, not only did he put up 324 yards and 2 touchdowns in the air, but he also put up 44 yards and 1 touchdown on the ground. So Adrian Martinez had a perfect game. He did not throw a pick, but he did have a fumble in the game. Case Cookers threw for 139 yards and 1 TD and was sacked 8 times in this game. 8 times. In fact, he was sacked so much that at the end of the game, when it was basically just worthless time, the Memphis coach pulled him. He pulled him from the game. Case Cookers wasn't too happy about it, but that's what happens when you just have a rough day. The Stallion defense, like I said, came out with these 8 sacks and a pick. They also held the Memphis offense to 212 total yards. Memphis only got 20 yards on the ground, only 192 through the air. Memphis managed 3 sacks in the game and a safety late in the fourth quarter. Now, that comes from something that was concerning to me. Birmingham was still throwing when they had the lead. I understand there was a chance that Memphis could have came back. But to me, they should have slowed it down with trying to run the ball more. You know, that Martinez can run the ball. You got C.J. Marable out there. And you got 2 good running backs, really, because you got the other guy, Percy. He was running the ball really well. So I don't understand what made them decide that they need to continue passing the ball. This was late in the fourth quarter. They were stuck in the end zone. I get it. They were backed up in the end zone. They were trying to get out of the end zone. But to me, I would have just went ahead and tried to run it out. Of course, the coach blamed Martinez for that, saying that he did not try to run it out, that he basically got sacked unnecessarily in the end zone. They gave a safety to Memphis. I still don't know what they were trying to do at the end of the game. Let's just put it that way. I would have been trying to run the ball, try to get that ball down the field, slow, take time off the clock, because Memphis managed to get the ball back, try to drive it down the field. And this is the thing about Memphis that was happening all game. One thing that hurt them bad was the 8 sacks. They put Case Cookers in this whole mood where he wasn't doing very good late in the game. He took one really bad hit late in the third quarter off of, actually it was an offsides play, but it was just the fact that he took that hit that said a whole lot about the rest of the game. And then a couple of plays later, he took another sack. It was just, he took too many hits in the game, even though he is not the most sacked quarterback in the game. The most sacked is E.J. Perry for the Michigan Panthers, and we'll talk about that game in a little while. He took a lot of hits, and he's been taking a lot of hits week after week. Memphis has got to do something about their offensive line because they only managed, like I said, 139 yards in the air and 49 yards on the ground. Now, we will say this. The Birmingham Stallions is the near perfect team in the UFL, and I think they're going to be the top team regardless this year. They're looking really, really good, especially if your quarterback is putting up almost 300, 400 yards of offense. So you're definitely doing a great job. Like I said, Deion King had 7 receptions for 144 yards. Still a great receiver. He had no TDs today, but he did good. Jace Starnberger and Marlon Williams had 1 TD reception apiece. Ricky Person, that's the other running back, added another rushing touchdown and was the second leading rusher with 37 yards. like I said, looking at this game, the only issue I see is that the Showboats have got to find themselves on offense. Defensively, they're okay. But offense, they've got to find themselves because they're putting themselves in a world of hurt when they can't get anything, especially their front four and front five. Same problem that Michigan had last week. Here goes Memphis, where I thought was going to do better. They end up struggling in that category this week. What a game that was, nevertheless. So let's move on to the DC Defenders versus Arlington Renegades. Arlington Renegades outgained the DC Defenders 419 yards to 259 yards. Now, this is what was surprising about this game. However, they came up 1 point short in a 29-28 loss after the Defenders, Matthew McCrane, kicked a 49 field goal with 4 seconds left on the clock. So this is another one of those squeakers that you've been seeing in the UFL. There's been a lot of squeakers, and the DC Defenders put up another one. Now, Luis Perez put up 209 yards and 2 touchdowns, had no interceptions. There should have. Jordan Teamu had 188 yards and 2 TDs. I believe the other quarterback threw an interception, and there was a fumble. So all the turnovers were by DC. But in the end, DC wins the game. Now, he also rushed for 53 yards and I believe a touchdown as well. Tyler Vaughns was the top receiver for the DC Defenders with 9 receptions for 109 yards and a TD. Both teams had 1 sack apiece. No big deal there. I'm going to talk about what I think about the DC Defenders defense in a minute. Jordan Teamu didn't throw a pick, but still didn't look solid this game. I'm just going to say he didn't look as good as I think he could possibly look. Renegades faded late, and 2 penalties by the defense in the last drive of the game helped put the DC Defenders in the field goal range. Renegades fall to 0-3. And here's something that's gonna resonate about Texas teams this week. 0-3. They're all 0-3 now. Well, except for the Brahmas. Brahmas are 2-1. But as far as the weekend goes, Texas is 0-3. All 3 Texas teams lost. But let's talk about the Renegades. The Renegades have gone to Game 3. Now, Game 1, they were looking for their identity. I think in Game 2, they found their identity. And I was thinking about now, when they play the DC Defenders, maybe they would give them a good enough game and they had a chance to win this game. As good as they played against the Battlehawks last week, DC Defenders did not play that great of a game this week. Their defense, to me, everybody said, well, they got a vaunted defense. The defense did enough to keep the Renegades from winning, but the Renegades put up a lot of offense. That defense bends something serious. I'm not a big fan of the type of nickel defense they run. You put 2 guard tackles down and you got 2 linebackers on the outside for rushers. I'm not a big fan of that. And in fact, the Renegades were able to run against this pretty well. So looking at this game, like I said, the DC Defenders, they won the game. Jordan Teamu played it well enough to win. He missed a lot of passes. I noticed a lot of overthrows in this game. Not like sideline to sideline. He didn't have that problem. But deep throws that went overhead, he missed a lot of throws. So that hurt them a little bit. But the biggest thing that seemed to hurt in this game for the Renegades is in the second half, they started to fade. It's like you were making drives. You got down to the end. Your defense could not hold on. Your defense, in fact, had 2 penalties at the end of the game that were crucial. I believe one was a pass interference and the other one was an offsides. Either way, both of those penalties hurt you. Or, no, I take that back. One was a blow to the head or something like that. One was 15 yards and 2 15-yard penalties. That's 30 yards you gave up on a drive. And with 4 seconds to go, DC Defenders get to kick a field goal and they win the game when they really should have lost this game, if you ask me, because they didn't play that great. So I'm going to say this about the DC Defenders. They're coming to Birmingham next week against the Stallions. If they play like they did this week, it's going to be another 33-20 or 33-15 win for the Stallions. The DC Defenders are not that good. They're being lucky. Every time they win, they're lucky. They lost the first week because they should have. They won 2 games where they've had to come back from behind to win. 2 games because they're not playing that great on offense and not really doing that great on defense either. So we'll see how they do next week. But the Renegades, they're like the bad luck team. They're 0-3 and they shouldn't be. But they're just not able to quite get the ball where they need to. At times they're dropping passes they shouldn't pass. Running backs are missing holes they shouldn't, and their running game is pretty good. But they've got to figure this thing out. Otherwise, they're going to go 0-10 for the season if they don't watch it. Now, let's talk about the next game here. After coming out up short against the Stallions last week, the Panthers needed to get back on their winning ways in front of their home crowd for the third week in a row. That's right. They've had 3 home games. No other team in the league has had 3 home games. Michigan did that, putting up 334 yards of offense in a 34-20 win over the hapless Houston Roughnecks. And I am going to say hapless. Okay. So, before I start my rankings, I'll talk about that at the end of the game, how I'm going to rank every team here. Michigan needed this win badly, and they got it. They put up 334 yards of offense. They have not been doing that at all. Here's something else that I saw that I talked about last week. Number 77, their left tackle, he started the game. He got hurt. He left the game. Number 75 came in and took his place. Guess what? Michigan had no sacks in this game. None. E.J. Perry didn't stay in the pocket that much. He did find a way to get out. E.J. Perry put up 208 yards and a TD. He also had 60 yards on the ground and 2 touchdowns on the ground. That helps an offensive line if you have a quarterback that can run. And the fact that he put up those 2 touchdowns, that kind of made the defense kind of say, I've got to stay in my spot for a minute before I rush the quarterback. Michigan's defense was harassing Senate all day, but only came up with 2 sacks. They still were in their face. They destroyed their running game. Houston didn't have much going on at all, really. And Senate threw a stupid pick to me. That one pick that cost them a drive that could have been a winning, a scoring drive. Michigan's offensive line was stout this game, and Houston was not able to get to E.J. Perry all day. So they did a great job. Now, Marcus Sims, who is arguably one of the fastest guys in the UFL, had the biggest reception of the day for a 66-yard touchdown. He had a total of 4 receptions of 84 yards. Kua Nakua had 8 tackles and an interception as Michigan's top defender. Now, Reed Sennett threw for 197 yards and had 1 TD and had an interception. Houston only managed 53 yards on the ground against the Panthers defense. That's what I was talking about. They couldn't run the ball at all. Houston falls to 0-3. And I don't know what it's going to take for Houston to win the game this year. They are not a good team. I'm sorry. They only can do so much. I don't think they're terrible, but they're just not the team. So they're the bottom feeders of the league right now. I'm going to say that they're the bottom feeders of the league. DC Defenders is a little different. The Arlington Renegades, where they are, is a little bit different. And I'll talk about that in a minute as well when I talk about how I feel about how I'm going to rank the teams this week. St. Louis Battlehawks versus the San Antonio Brahmins. Whew. Boy, they always be putting up a game here. St. Louis Battlehawks dominated the fourth quarter to beat the San Antonio Brahmins 31-24. That fourth quarter was wow for San Antonio. They just showed that they're the best team. And San Antonio had a lot of drives where they just got stopped. And nobody really played great. A.J. McCarron threw for 152 yards and 1 TD. McCarron also had 21 yards rushing and a touchdown on the ground. That was late in the fourth quarter, too. The Battlehawks running duo, Jacob Sayers and Mateo Durant, ran for 92 yards and a TD on 15 carries for the Battlehawks. Brumman's running back by committee approach put up 102 yards on the ground with John Lovett, the leading rusher, for 41 yards. And I forgot who was the gentleman who scored the touchdown. And Chase Garber threw for 143 yards and a TD. Now, here's the funny thing. Neither McCarron nor Garber threw an interception in the game. There were some other turnovers in the game that caused a problem. But Hakeem Butler. So, for the past 2 weeks, we have heard very little from Hakeem Butler. I think he caught 1 pass last week, maybe 2 passes the week before. He has not really done much. He dropped most of the passes. This week, he showed up. Hakeem Butler finally had a pretty decent day. He had 6 receptions for 87 yards and 1 touchdown. that's kind of like a redemptive story. I hope that this is going a good place. Surprisingly, Aitman only had one. The Battlehawks' leading receiver only had one reception for the day. But that's fine. They ended up winning the game. You know, A.J. McCarron did what he did with what he did. He still leads that team. That offense is still something else. Now, I will say this. The Brahmas took advantage of the fact that that's why they got 103 yards on the ground. Battlehawks are still really not stout against the run. Against the pass, that's a different story. Their defensive ends, they were coming hard in this game. And I'm going to say this. Brahmas basically failed to complete a winning drive after having two big comeback drives in previous games. St. Louis didn't manage to sack against the Brahmas, but the defense held firm in the fourth quarter. So, to be honest with you, the Brahmas still look pretty good. They just came up short. You know, it's like their offense is not getting what it's like. I look at that offense and it should be doing more than what it does. It's like it's built for passing, but they do more running than passing. Still, this was a pretty decent game to watch. Despite the score. You know, you look at that score, you say, But no, that was probably one of the better games of the week. The Battlehawks is a really good team. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to talk about my ratings now. Of course, I got to put the Birmingham Stallions at number one, not just because I'm a giddy-up guy. I'm a fan of the Birmingham Stallions. It's by far the most talented. Their defense is staunch. Their offense is getting into gear. They can run and pass the ball really well. They are probably going to end up in the championship game at this point. And we're talking about the UFL is not an easy conference. Most of those teams have great defenses, okay? Number two on this list right now for me is the Battlehawks. The Battlehawks are coming together. They're going to be a tough team, and I can't wait to see when the Battlehawks come to Birmingham to play the Birmingham Stallions. But that won't be this week. This week is DC Defenders. DC Defenders. I should be putting them at number 3, but I'm still going to put the Brahmins in that position. I think the Brahmins are still a good enough team. They may still challenge. You should see them in the playoffs. You definitely should see them in the playoffs. Number 4. And this is a tough decision for me. I'm going to put the DC Defenders at number 4. Issue with the DC Defenders. They still have got to get themselves together on offense. They seemed a little bit better this week. They found a receiver. But Teyamu is not playing as great. I don't know if he's having issues, like they said. They were talking about this during the game. If he's having issues with finding what receivers he feels like he can trust, he can throw to. But he's had guys come through for him. He should be able to throw them. Number 88 got hurt in this game, and I don't know if that threw him off that he lost his tight end in this game. But I don't know what's going on with DC on offense, and I definitely don't know what's going on. They say the defense is pretty good. At times it was. It did what it needed to do to win that game or get them in a position to win the game. But at times, that defense allowed too many yards on the ground. Sometimes too many yards in the air. It's not that great. DC is why I said put them at number 4 right now. Number 5. Number 5 is Memphis. I still think that Memphis is number 5 on this list. Memphis has a chance to be the number 2 team in USFL. So we shall see how that goes at the end of the season. They're still at that spot. Now, sitting at the bottom, Michigan Panthers is number 6. They're getting better. They've won 2 crucial games, so that keeps them in the hunt. They also may be there at the end of the season. USFL has got, the Showboats and the Panthers have got to play, and we're going to see what happens when they play. But I think they're sitting in a pretty decent position where those two teams could show up at the end of the season and be in the playoffs at least. Okay, number 7. Number 7 for me is most definitely the Arlington Renegades. And they're sitting at, this is the funniest thing. They're 0-3. They could go 7-3 if they get this thing together. The Arlington Renegades are that close. They've got to stop the turnovers. They got to stop the penalties. They got to stop the stupid drops. It's just the little things that they're not doing. They got a good Luis Perez is a decent quarterback in this league. He is a very good quarterback, in fact. So let's see what happens. Let's see if they get themselves together. They can pull all the elements together. They got a good defense. They got a good offense. Last week they ran the ball well. They did okay and they finally found a rhythm in the passing game. Let's see if they can pull it together and win out the rest of the season. Now, sitting at the bottom, and I don't know what's going to happen with this team, is the Houston. Houston Roughnecks are definitely at the bottom of the heap. They got some talent on their team. They got some guys on defense that are pretty good. But they can't get it together. They can't win a game. Their offense, they turn the ball over. The defense is porous at times. It's just not a good team. And I don't think the Roughnecks may win one game at some point during one of the other bottom feeder teams. But for right now, I don't see that happening. So there's my top 8 teams. There's my rankings for this week. We still have a long way to go. This is only week 3. Anything can happen. Player injuries and player teams get better as we go by. We could see an absolute change changing of the guard for every team in this league. That's a possibility. But for now, that's my rankings. Tell me below in the comments, look right here on YouTube, go ahead and make a comment and say, tell me what you think about my ranking of the teams this week. And make sure that if you haven't done it so far, make sure you hit that like button, share, and subscribe. And y'all have a wonderful day.